What's going on, everybody? Welcome into the Bulls Report. Coming up on today's show, I have 3 blockbuster trade ideas for Chicago that could go down this summer. And maybe this guy right here, maybe he's going to wake up and finally make some moves that will get the Bulls back into championship contention. We'll obviously have to wait and see on that. But before I give you guys my 3 trade ideas, I just want you guys to name me one player you want the Bulls to trade for this summer. It could be anybody. Get wild with this one, but who is your dream trade target for Chicago? So the first trade idea I cooked up, and these are all blockbusters. They're not minuscule moves. These are like headline-grabbing moves for Chicago. And the number one move that we have is them getting Paul George, PG-13, for Zach LaVine and a 2027 unprotected first-round pick. We'll get into the Clipper side of things here in a little bit, but I do want to first deep dive in on Paul George. So this past season was his, I would say, worst season over the past couple in terms of just overall production. Like we saw his points per game go down all the way to 20.8. Still being able to be an okay playmaker at that forward position, averaging always near 4 or 5 assists per evening. And then the shooting percentages for Paul George. He's always been an efficient shooter, especially from downtown. We did see him struggle a little bit more this year in that paint area and getting to the rim, but overall it's pretty solid. And the thing I love the most about Paul George here is his catch and shoot three-point percentage throughout his NBA career has always been at the top of the league. I mean, this past season, 45.4%. And why I love that so much? Because just naturally, in the NBA, when defense is getting rotation, at the end of the shot clock, I feel like it's 70% of the time it ends in a catch-and-shoot three. I mean, just watch the NBA playoffs tonight between the Mavs and the Timberwolves. Watch how many possessions just end with a guy getting the ball in rotation and putting up a three from downtown. But his pull-up midi percentage, pretty solid as well. I mean, 35.8. And then pull-up midi at 45.4. Did struggle a little bit at getting to the rim this season. That was down over the past couple of years at 57.8. But overall, Paul George is a pretty efficient ball player. But, he did struggle this postseason with shooting the basketball. Averaged only 20 points per game, 6.8 rebounds, and it's supposed to say 4.8 assists per game. That's on me. And then he did shoot 41.1% from downtown. So the postseason struggles still follow Paul George. The playoff P jokes, still remain true for him. But my take on him coming to the Bulls here is I think Paul George is one of those few players in the NBA that can fit into any single system. Like, you got guys like Kevin Durant, Klay Thompson, like those guys that can, be very productive offensively, but don't necessarily need the ball in their hands. Like Paul George, he's great with the ball in his hands. But if he is a tertiary, secondary option and he can play off ball, that's also a strength of his game. And then also with those types of players, like, they are good defenders. They're very versatile. They can guard 1 through 4, which is another reason why I love PG. So I would never really have any doubts about Paul George. Would he be able to fit in this Bulls system? He can fit in any system in the league. That's just the type of player he is. But going back to this trade, when I first, started to chop this up and I was looking at it and I was like, would the Clippers say yes to this offer? And, originally I was probably going to be like, probably not. Like, why would they want to split up the big duo of Paul George and Kawhi Leonard? Like, it doesn't necessarily make too much sense here, but you are getting Zach LaVine and you are getting a first-round pick. I'll give you guys my thoughts on why the Clippers say yes here in a second, but I want you guys to get down in the comment section for me. Would you accept this trade? Give me an A for accept or give me a D for decline down below in the comment section. Curious to see what you guys have to say. So I actually think Los Angeles, they are looking for a position where it's like, I think they still want to make a move this season where they could remain competitive, but they could also find a way to look past the Paul George and Kawhi Leonard era. And they got to start looking at that because both those guys, they've been dealing with injuries. Over the past couple of seasons, they haven't been the same, as they were back in their prime when Kawhi was in Toronto and San Antonio and PG was back in Indiana. And you're giving them a player in Zach LaVine who would keep them competitive, very familiar with Ty Lue as well, dating back to the USA, Olympic team. And you're also giving them a 2027 first-round pick. And if I'm, Steve Ballmer in the Lakers front office, I'm looking at a Bulls first-round pick as pretty freaking valuable considering it always feels like, it's in that, 9 to 15 range. So I actually think, still think, Clippers most likely say no, but I don't think it's out of the world that they could possibly say yes to this. We'll get to 2 more trade ideas here in a second, but first I do want to give a big-time shout-out to Prize Picks, today's presenting sponsor. And if you guys download the Prize Picks app and use promo code CLNS when you're making your first deposit only into your account we will match it up to $100. It's simple. Pick 2 to 6 players, choose more than or less than on some stat projections, and put your basketball knowledge to the test. Hey, Western Conference Finals are tonight. This is the lineup I'm cooking up for tonight's slate of games. Taking the more on Derek Lively, 7.5 points. Jaden McDaniels taking his more on his point total at 10.5. And then Naz Reid, who's turned into one of my favorite non-bowl players in the NBA. So I'm going to take his more on 9.5 points. But whether you want to fade those picks or ride with those picks, we just suggest you guys do it at Prize Picks. It's daily fantasy sports made easy. Pick more, pick less. Just play Prize Picks. Check it out. Link for that in the comment section and description of today's show. All right, trade idea number 2 that I cooked up here would be the Bulls receiving Deandre Ayton and Jeremy Grant, but they are giving up Patrick Williams, Nikola Vucevic, and a 2028 first-round pick. If you just ignore the pick here for a second, like center for center, forward for forward on 4 players that all relatively play the same at their position. I thought that was pretty funny when I was, looking at it after I crafted up this trade. But the Bulls also are attaching on a 2028 first-round pick. And listen, I would hate to give up future draft capital. Like, I am in the camp that the Bulls need to build through the draft. You look at all these teams that are on these deep playoffs runs, like the Timberwolves. You got teams like even like the Pacers, they're built through the draft. Like, I think that is almost became undervalued in the NBA of, draft picks because, in the era that we were living in before, it was, trade all your draft picks, go get Kevin Durant, go, buy whatever player you want, and it ended up working out for a lot of teams. But the number one reason why I love this trade is you're moving off Nikola Vucevic. And I do want to look at Vuce and Ayton side by side right now because you look at Vuce's numbers, they're better than Ayton. Like, he, averaging 18 and 10 a game. Like, this is a very, very solid production if you just look at it on face value. But Ayton is a much better defender than Vuce, and it's not even saying Ayton is a good or great defender in the NBA, but he's significantly better than Vuce, and he is just such a net negative on that side of the floor. Even if Vuce would average 22 and 15, I still think his overall, impact on the basketball game is a negative. I'll give credit to Vuce. He's always been good at the free throw line, and this past season he shot 29% from downtown. That was my biggest gripe with him. He took like 3 a game, and he was never very efficient. But I would much prefer a center like Ayton over Vuce. And then you're also getting a guy like Jeremy Grant. And, Jeremy Grant's significantly better than Patrick Williams, hence why the Bulls had to throw in another first-round pick. But, is Grant really a needle mover, or is he good stats on a bad team type of player? Because you look at these numbers. 21 a game, 3.5 boards, 2.8 assists, shooting 40% from downtown. You're like, hey, Jeremy Grant's a hell of a basketball player. But, the Trailblazers weren't, they weren't even remotely competitive this past season. So I kind of think Grant may be one of those guys where it's like, hey, puts up great numbers on a bad team, then he comes to a winning organization, and it's like he just can't get it done. So, overall this trade, if I was offered this, I actually have no idea what I would do here because I want to move off Vuce so bad, but I also would hate give up a 2028 first-round pick. I have no idea if I would do this, but hey, maybe you guys let me know your choice down below. But trade idea number 3 for me. This is my favorite one. So it would be the Bulls getting Brandon Ingram and Dyson Daniels, and they are giving up Zach LaVine and this year's first-round pick 11. If there is any future draft capital for the Bulls to give up, I would rather have it be this year. This is by far going to be the worst draft class over the next 5 seasons. There's a lot of, solid role players, but there is no stars by any means. So I would love for the Bulls, if they are trading future draft capital, give up this year's pick in comparison to future years. But you may be saying, why would the Pelicans move off Brandon Ingram? Well, Mark Stein reported this a couple days ago, saying there is a growing belief league-wide that Pelicans will aggressively explore the trade market for Brandon Ingram next season. And, we've heard reports that it's going to be a decision between Zion and B.I. Well, Mark Stein's reporting that they believe it's going to be B.I. on his way out. And he's a tremendous basketball player, no doubt about it. I always feel like, whenever anybody talks about his game, they just view him as like a true 3-level scorer. And, no doubt he is. But I always view his playmaking as the most underrated part of his game, just due to his natural height. He's able to see over the defense, especially when double teams come to him. He can just toss it over the top, great at those, corner kick-out passes. And he had a really solid year for New Orleans. But then you kick it to the postseason this season, he got cooked by the Thunder. And this was the Lou Dort effect. He had him in the Dort chamber throughout all 4 games. And, the numbers are just terrible. 14 points, 4.5 rebounds, 3 assists. And the efficiency is just awful at 34.5%. Was that because Zion wasn't there and C.J. McCollum wasn't really playing his best ball, but he had some decent players around him? We just, Ingram just, struggled for a 4-game sample size. But, in terms of this deal, like, I would 100% do this. You're moving off Levine's contract and you're getting a wing in Ingram. And just overall, I just value wings so much more than guards in the NBA. I mean, it's just, you just look at what has won over the past 20 seasons. More than not, it is guards, or it is wings, unless you have a Steph Curry type of point guard, being your best player. But let me know, will the Bulls be able to trade Zach LaVine this summer? I think that's the biggest question you have to ask yourself, and the Bulls front office has to ask itself. Will they be able to move off him at all? Give me a Y for yes or an N for no down in the comment section. And make sure you guys are subscribed here to the Bulls Report. We will post a video every single day this summer. So make sure you guys hit that subscribe button and lock us in. See you guys next time. Go Bulls.